this will not be an 8-hour broadcast.
I'd be a little bit concerned.
Somebody should be going like this to wrap it up at some point, right? Like, let's
Well,
wrap
we
it up.
started
That's what I did when I started. Yeah. So let's see here. Share my screen. Now we watch the Devil's Hallway. It's like the must be David Bowie in the Labyrinth for some reason.
We are
still. It doesn't matter. I can start talking. They're probably recording.
That's
this video. But awesome. Keep all together. First thing that we excited that.
There you go.
Check. Just what I said.
Yeah. Say something terrible about your wife.
I love my wife. She's a dear.
Smart man. Have your skin and now we don't.
All right, so it did this before, remember, and then it should, because it didn't present. All right, so welcome to those of you in the room to the model headquarters. When we got this office earlier this year, we actually never anticipated having people into it. It was more of a space for us to work together. So we're all pretty much the first visitors. Knows me or familiar with me. I'm the managing partner of Model Technology Solutions. One of the founders. We started it in 2014, and we stay on what we do, which is automation, and System Center is where we kind of built a little bit of our name up, doing SCCM, OSD, kinds of things. And so when I agreed to host this, I assumed that somebody that's much better at PowerShell would be presenting this evening, and everybody is, at least in my organization, is gone out, has the kids tonight, so you guys are stuck with me for the evening. So should be fun though. The topic that we chose for tonight is to look at a real solution that's going in place at 11 p.m. Central Time tonight for a very large customer of ours that I wrote last week. The testing finished up today, and so it's going to go live at 11 o'clock. I'll be online for that this evening. So what we're going to do is we're going to piece it apart. Data that has been faked. They're protected, but what we're trying to problem scenario and actually run the solution. So why we came to that solution. And then as part of this, as an open discussion at the end, I'd like to go through the script and let's pick it apart. Let's find other elements of the script that we could make it either more efficient, make it better. There's probably a ton of stuff we can do. So the agenda, so a very brief discussion about who Model is. We'll go through the history of JSON and scripting. I think that'd be a good topic for everybody. My scripting approach, look at the script, and we'll go through the demo. So Model, went through some of this already. I'll kind of fast forward here. But again, we go to market with specializing in client and data center management and automation. So everything from on-prem to a hybrid environment. We've got people specialized in a lot of different areas of that. And if we don't have it, we won't do the project. We won't do the work. So pretty big on customer service and satisfaction to make sure we get it right. Or the Anderson model of consulting, if you will. All right, the history of JSON. Anybody know who that is?
Yeah, scripting guy.
Scripting guy. That's who taught me VBScript. And we saw each other down at Ignite this year, and we kind of reconnected and had a chat, right? So scripting guy, Ed Wilson, I think it might have been even before he was a scripting guy, was in a class of his for a week that the company I was working for at the time flew him up there. The book, VBScript, that he just written, and learned a ton of stuff. It was kind of my first introduction. It was 2001 or 2. It was my first introduction to kind of scripting. So I started IT back then in 2001. I was trained by Ed in a lot of the VBScript stuff at the time. I was technical editor of the Mastering System Center Configuration Manager 2007 book by Cybex. I play guitar. There's me on stage at the pageant. I have a family. There's my family.
Your lovely wife.
Yeah, and my lovely wife. And I loved VBScript so much. Loved it. I cannot express, this is one of my scripts from 2005 that, sad or not, but I have a whole repository of all the scripts I've ever written, right? And so this was one of my scripts from 2005, and I loved it a lot, right? In fact, introduction to PowerShell, it's kind of I don't do a whole lot of IT consulting or scripting work as much as I used to. I do about 3 to 5 projects a year, so every other month I'll go do a project. Fees, IT or scripting in general, right? Take these or leave these. These are just how I view the world. There's a lot of ways to accomplish a goal. There's very rarely a right or wrong way. It's just a different path to get to the same goal, right? And a lot of this can be true with scripting. I think when they think you're the smartest person in the room, you're probably wrong, because somebody's smarter in some area, some facet, some capability that you may or may not have, right? So says it's sharing. No solution is perfect. That's a quote from Michael Lombardi this evening. So this was live updated. Which is the feed completely gone?
We are back on the 3rd bullet point. So
Okay.
hopefully it's just catching up.
Excellent. So no solution is perfect, and you're absolutely right. I mean, done. It's never really done, right? It's more of a, it's a living element. It always is, always will be. There's very rarely a completion stage. Other people are kind of wondering that as well, right? So those are my general philosophies. So now let's go into Monad. Everybody know what Monad was? So I was introduced to Monad in 2006 in MS. I went to Monad Intro 1 to an advanced script for Monad, and I thought, this is not going to take off. I mean, literally, I'm like, this is, there's no way they can do it. Change directory into WMI. It's not possible, right? Because I was so into VBScript. Apparently, Monad was starting to be developed in 2001, 2000 for quite some time. And Monad, it's a unit used by philosophers to signify a variety of entities from a genus to a god, thing all encompassing. And programming, it's a functional program that constructs and captures various notations of computation. It's from Wikipedia, if you qualify that as a valid source. Jeffrey Snover defined Monad as the next generation platform for administrative automation. This is back in 2002 from the Monad Manifesto, right? Solves problems by leveraging elements from the .NET platform. Anybody read the Monad Manifesto?
It's fantastic.
It's a good read.
Have you seen the annotated?
I have not seen the annotated
Yeah.
version by Snover.
I want to say Don Jones actually did annotation on it. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
But it's
a great read. Yeah. So moving on to my scripting approach, and again, this is more general terms, right? This is how I think of script and the framework that I was provided in a much simplified way. Right? It always starts with defining the problem, right? When I define the problem, I define the half-life of this. How is the script going to be around? And so you take the script in our case, right? The script tonight, it's not going to, it's really a giant migration, one and done, and maybe I'll store my repository for something down the road, right? It's not something you're going to run repeats, it's something that will be managed inside of an engine. So then what that tells me is define the lifetime of the script, effort are you going to put into this script, right? Because you could spend weeks and months developing the script that I put together in 3 days, right? Because you can continually perfect it, add more elements in it, and just make it more efficient. But again, it's the opportunity cost. The customer dollars. Goals, script. Similarly, outline steps. Open up editor. Anything in VBScript, I would start writing. Notepad, just put in what things I need to have. And then I grab snips of code from the internet because that's I'm a firm believer there's only been one script written and we all just steal from it every day. So I grab pieces of code to do what I need to do, maybe the core pieces of function, then I'll wrap inputs and outputs. So based on the outline, actually start creating the scripts or functions. This is again my approach.
Oh, feeds. Right.
So is my approach. So I would love to hear an open discussion after I kind of get through my pieces and hear how you guys do it, right? It's for snippets, I put pieces together and start ordering testing and details, as you all know, incredibly important, from syntax to the script execution to timing, all sorts of elements you really have to pay attention to when you're in your testing phase. A lot of people that are new scripting start testing and so they're done, right? All of the other elements affected, or the efficiency or the logging or troubleshooting or thinking of conditions that maybe the script won't run in, right? Work on those. Then you run into development. There's just those.
That's a question.
Yeah. It's like ready shooting, something like that. So, I mean, interested in, if you're starting a new script, right, I can lay out the problem. It's coming up soon.
Feeds going.
So the basics of the problem, get these bullets out and go through it. So hundreds and hundreds of collections are nested. And in 2007, you could create sub-collections of collections. If you don't know what a collection is, it's simply like a folder, if you will. It holds elements. Like, think of a collection of baseball cards. It's just a pile of baseball cards. A collection is just a pile of machines, right? Defined, you can have, a machine can be in multiple memberships of different collections. Those collections have different things assigned to them, like maintenance windows, deployments, or rules, or settings. And you have to account for all that. Well, when you migrate from 2007 to current branch, you can set up what's called a migration link. When you do that, it brings over all the dependencies because, well, they're dependencies. In an environment that my problem was in, there was a total of 45,000 seats in this environment, and they had 30,000 seats from their workstations already there. We were bringing their servers in, so we had to set up RBAC to whittle down the permissions. We're going to bring in the servers and their environments in. So there's already an existing folder structure, collection structure, naming. All these things already exist. We can't touch them, right? So we can't conflict with those. So then you take it a step further, and we don't want to bring over all of these old elements of dependencies that we're not going to use. We just need the collections, maintenance windows, and query memberships, right? Hundreds, right? Again. And so what ended up happening, we found that a lot of collections were named the same, heavily nested, right? Which is, you can't do in 2000 branch, right? So you have to create folder structures and design around it. The timeline is freeze December 9th, and they need everything migrated by December 9th, right? And so you're like, all right, so we have 5, 6, 10,000 machines to migrate and hundreds of collections, and oh yeah, we got to get change controls approved, and it's, you know, it's already November 9th, right? Yeah, November 9th. So we looked at all the elements that were built in and how to migrate them, and I determined the best way was to, I'm going to query the SQL 2007 database. I'm going to dump all the elements I need to a comma file, and then I am going to manipulate that spreadsheet using all sorts of functions or macros to get the data the way that I need that data to be presented. Then I'm going to write a PowerShell script to ingest it in the current branch side, right? So that was the problem. Any questions? I know we have some SCCM people in here, so any questions on what you do a different way?
I think we're using the Excel module to do all the Excel manipulation.
Like, I thought about it. Seeing the script, I did things instead of inverting on the fly. I put them into functions because it's easier for me to deal with that way, right? And I call them multiple times. So yeah, I thought about it, but I think more so than anything, it was the timing aspect. Right? Well,
if you're going to end up reading CSVs, right, having a nice Excel thing isn't that important.
Right. Yep.
That harks back to the thing you talked about earlier, since it only only has to happen once. I don't need a clever way to pull it out
Yeah.
and sort it in Excel.
Yeah, a routine script like the one that you saw, that VBScript, is much cleaner, much more organized in a different way, right? So
Sure.
that used to run all the time. So the solution, we had to normalize the input. So getting the input file was not hard. Normalizing it was kind of a beast because they had different query rules and different collections. We wanted to consolidate all the maintenance windows. They had 58 unique maintenance windows across their collections. We trimmed that down to 18. There's a lot of overlap and some business decisions we can make, and had to get some agreement on the business. We had 290 lines of things that they cared about, which were collections, 290 that we needed to move before tonight or as of tonight. We got that down to 20 and going through the rationalization. And obviously we use PowerShell. So we create the collections, create the maintenance windows based on the data we extracted from SQL. We add the query-based rules to the collection so that as machines pop up in their new environment, they're already set in Windows. So there's no chance of people rebooting or deploying things that they shouldn't be deploying. And we're putting it all in just kind of a unique placeholder folder at the moment. And so that's the end of my presentation. I almost couldn't do that. Yeah, we'll think of stuff. All right, so let's jump in. Let's get my RDP to send today. So the thing we're going to look at is the raw input.
That's a file.
Yeah, so this is the raw input, just to give you an idea.
Feed again, just so you know.
No.
This came from our SQL query.
This came from a SQL query that I dumped, right? So this was how they were doing things. And this is the formatted concatenation of all of their selects. This is what it looked like beforehand. So they had joins that were unnecessary. They had attribute selects. They had lists of arrays. I mean, trying to format that data.
That's some parentheses there. That's pretty awesome.
You see that?
That's maintainable right there.
Holy cow.
Yeah. So yeah, I've changed the names of all these servers just so you know. But
That's
yeah,
horrible.
yeah. So you look at this, you're like, I can't do anything with that. So that came into this, right? Which through a lot of formatting and string manipulation is how I got it there. A lot of functions, a lot of beating my head against the wall for about 2 days of normalizing this file, right? And so then you look at just the sheer number of them, and they're all like this, right? And they have duplicate names, they have, you know, different elements in their arrays that we had to accommodate. So here's another one. Here's a good one. So got to put it together, and the final input looked something like this. This is the actual input that minus the server names that we'll be running this evening. So we changed the collection names to something more manageable that were based on the actual maintenance windows, right? So weekly, Thursday, 12 a.m., that kind of thing. Here in the actual code, it was very similar to what you've already seen. So cleaned up the description of the maintenance window. Normalized start times and the durations of all the maintenance windows, and then still kept the original query in there.
It keeps dropping, and I haven't gotten anybody in the thing to tell me they're not like seeing what it is. So I don't know how much we're losing.
Gotcha. So the actual queries into here, combining them all, was character limits in Excel, in the Excel cell. So you can see that we actually had to go through and split them off after we hit close to the character limit. And then further, there's a character limit in the SCCM dynamic query of how many machines you can put into a list that we ran into. Found that out the hard way when I'm like, oh, there's machines missing when we're doing our testing, right? This comes back to your thorough test plans and figuring out what you're actually doing. And ended up having a couple queries in some of the collections to get them all to fit. Yeah. Any questions on the input? And one of the things I'll do is just kind of go through it a little bit. So here was the old collection name, right? Here's the new collection name. the old collection ID, the old maintenance window name, the new maintenance window name. I use the description for a lot of decision trees in the actual scripts to do things. So I had to make sure that those were pretty pristine. What time the maintenance windows start, how long the maintenance windows are they yearly or monthly? And then the name of the actual query for the maintenance window. I decided just to call it 1, 2, or 3. And we can look at this in the script. It is, or if your minutes is anything over 60 in the actual new CM maintenance window schedule commandlet, you have to specify in hours because it actually won't process anything over 60 minutes. So you have to do it in hours. So actually do math based on the input number here to figure out is it hours or minutes, what it should be. Like there was a 5-minute window that was basically to say no servers are ever going to pass or do anything in this window. It's a dummy window. And then everything else is 180, so 3 hours. But I could have statically set it, but actually do the math to figure out if it's minutes or hours. Because anything, I tried it and it would kept failing. It was driving me insane. I figured out that 3 hours. It's like, oh yeah, there you go. So that's a little while to get through.
You're not going to open a notepad?
I'll save everybody.
That'll be hard for people watching them.
Is that better?
Yeah.
So I like the use of regions quite a bit. It helps me navigate where I'm at. I get lost a lot. My comment sections are all pretty standardized when I do these, right? So kind of inputs it takes, what it does from a high level, right? I'm sure there's a better way to format these. The requirements, and so what needs to happen in the environment before this can run. So here's the SQL tasks that are ran, right? SQL to get the actual raw data. In my kind of region script editor. And as we go through this, I was going to say make comments of things that to improve, right? All right, so the input parameters, I put something in there the default because I found out when I was testing it, I got tired of specifying the command line.
Sure.
So I just did it this way. A way to just write it. So formatted it very much like that. To file itself. Let me just go through. Right. I wanted to get a list of all the collections, both device and user, because you can't have duplicate collections in SCCM. So I wanted to get all the list of the collections, and anything I'm inputting, I want to check against that list to verify it doesn't already exist. So just hardening after, escaping out of the function. So that's me getting all the list. This is the actual creation of the SCCM collection based on the input file. Is or not?
Nobody's answered me yet.
So one of the things that I do is I go through and I'll put one-liner comments just over the lines that.
I think it's just a delay. Because they just showed up. Oh no, I guess maybe not. Maybe it is just.
No.
Just keep going, I guess.
All right. And as you can basically see, I want to make sure that there's, for example, some length to the actual variable that's in there. I'm sure there's a better check to do. and then double check to make sure the collection doesn't actually exist, and then go through, write the log, what we're actually creating and that it didn't exist, create the schedule for the actual updating of the collection, because by default there is none, and then creating the actual collection itself. Trying to capture any of the exception or error messages as we go, and then if it didn't do any of this, tell us that it was already a collection and moved on to the next space, right? So that's kind of the creation of the collection, which is one element to it. Throughout the process, I actually had a need to denote when the next refresh was going to be. So if I bring this on a Thursday and the next refresh Sunday, I have to get the date of the next. So I wrote, I mean, stole from the internet, manipulated.
Good plan.
Yeah, formatted it the way I needed to. So basically, I just throw in what day of the week, and then it returns the actual date of the next week, of the next time that date occurs, right? Because I didn't know when this was going to be ran. This is a basically a string match to determine what folder I need to actually be put into based on some of the normalization of it. And if you're a VBScript guy, you can tell very much a VBScript way to approach it. This was actually a last minute add because I had separate folders by maintenance window. Because there's no way to view the maintenance window in the console to determine what day applies to it unless it's by the name. But they didn't like having all the names in the same folder, so they wanted them moved into separate folders, right? So I wrote this and move it to where it needs to go. Creating the maintenance windows is actually a lot easier than I thought. The only kind of piece to it is it a yearly or is it a monthly recurrence? And then you have to do the math to determine if it's hours or if it's minutes, right? Because the commandlet takes the parameter of hours or minutes, and it will not take a lot of minutes over 60 and convert that to an hour for you, which is silly. So just
60 or does it take 59?
I don't know. I didn't try. I bet it won't take 60. Yeah. This probably takes 50. Again, you have to create the new CM schedule with what you're looking to do out of it, and then you can pass that into the collection name, the maintenance window name. Maintenance window, pass the collection name, the description, the schedule, and then try to catch the messages. And if it's a yearly message or if it's a yearly maintenance window, it's formatted differently down here. The recur count, instead of being monthly, is yearly, right? So the actual schedule, the way the schedule gets built out is different. Coming down, query rule, just to see if there's data in the actual query rule that I was pulling, because I was having some problems actually getting that large string to get passed through the way it should. It was in there, then go through and actually create, and I actually let this hard fail. So I don't check to see if there's already a name, a rule name with it there. So that's one element we could probably improve upon. Once you have the collection, the maintenance window, the query that populates the collection, you can then move it. And so moving the folder, the collection, you basically just grab the collection, change the directory to the actual folder that you want to move it to, and then you can move the path of the folder pretty easily.
Huh.
You cannot create it in its final resting location with the commandlets, which is very annoying.
Does that actually work for your catch block there?
I don't know. It always moves it. I've never had it in there.
I'm curious because it's not in a sub expression.
Oh, right, yeah, that dollar underscore dot.
Exception message.
That won't work.
Oh, that won't work?
You got to wrap it in parentheses with a $sign in front of it to get to the sub expression.
Oh, yeah, this whole
Otherwise, you'll just get like the first line,
Yeah,
dot exception dot message,
Yeah.
which I have done many times.
Yeah. Good to know.
I'll change that from message to item name.
You only got about.
I know.
Just saying. That'd be something to take a note on.
Yeah, we'll have to go through, and the good news is I'm not actually running this one. Where was I at?
You should blame it on Jesse anyway.
We'll blame it on Jesse.
That's what he gets for not being here.
It is probably his fault.
You didn't close the parent on the first one.
zero up there.
Demos, guys, demos.
Oh, I've done enough of these. They don't bother me anymore. I used to get real nervous, right? I'd shake and be like, oh my God, I typoed. So then I have basically the way that I approach it was I had a main function that kind of starts everything, right? So the parameters, gets a psycho connection, reads the data, creates the log, connects to the site server, and then goes through the functions, passing all the parameters that it needs to. Some of the stuff, again, because it's not going to be reused, like this should probably be an input variable. Sure. It'd be a lot easier than just hard coding it. But for our purposes, it did not matter, right? So shall we go see what the script does in my function? Don't tell Desi. They're like, don't you have a demo environment for this? I'm like, yeah, I do. What fun is that? I got an approach for your customers soon. All right, so if we go into our structure here, I need to have a folder called MW2 because again, I want to create everything in a somewhat of a container. And the container is basically just a way to segregate it so I can find everything I need to find. So there's nothing under MW2. If I go into the cleansed input item, here's my CSV with all my data. This is going to just be the actual elements that will drive the engine to create all the things I need created, right? That was fun. Again, in my testing, I kind of got tired of passing in command line parameters, so I just hard coded the elements in it. There we go. So changed my site code in my CSV file. Those are the only two elements I really need to set. Make sure there's no log there. Let's give it a go. So the interesting thing is what I've noticed in running this is that the first line is always what appears to be the header line, which I should have accounted for in the looping process because it just escapes out and actually doesn't do anything. But I should have probably just ignored it altogether. So you can see here that it found a collection that did not exist and it created the collection, jumped over to the function, opened the maintenance window, found out that it was 5 minutes. Sunday, went through and created the actual maintenance window. Then it needs to populate it with systems. There's the actual query to populate it with systems. Then it needs to move it into a folder called Sunday, but it didn't find the folder, so it created the folder for us. And then it moved the folder. Then it goes into the next one. So now it's like, oh, hey, we need to create this one because it doesn't exist, and so on and so on. So we should see function lock. It takes about 5 or 6 minutes. It's only 18 collections, but it's hundreds of servers in the queries. The queries will take the longest to actually populate. Sure. What we found is what's really interesting. You get beyond a certain number of actual machine names in your query. When you go to edit it in the console, it's blank. It looks like there's nothing there. And I did it manually, created it manually, just to verify the same behavior. Absolutely the same behavior. It's there and it populates and you can edit it if you click on what appears to be nothing. I'll show you. You click on nothing and hit edit, it'll bring it up. You can't see anything in the console with it.
Weird.
It's got to be some kind of limit that can be displayed in that.
Still trying to figure out what's causing the network to kill on us.
We get it.
I guess maybe though.
Yeah. So the big thing, my learning from writing this, a couple things commandlets for configuring, which
It's not nice.
yeah. Oh, by the way, Jesse's rebooting everything tonight. That'd be hilarious. Other than the commandlet kind of nuances that exist, was the it would have been not PowerShell.
Sure.
But again, given the time window that I had, it's basically had 4 days to figure it out.
What did you do to clean that up? Didn't
Excel magic,
oh,
Notepad, functions.
Just no bad number plus.
I thought about using plus because they have a fine interface, which is really cool.
That's really nice.
I just didn't want straight up Notepad. I'm telling you, Notepad's my favorite tool. Has been.
he yells at me for using it.
Why do I raise my voice?
No, it's more like bad.
Yeah.
I don't hit her either. Just so we're clear.
Lies.
Becky.
Yeah.
Do that.
And the other thing is and when you're under a time constraint, right, and you realize that every day that you take doing this, it costs them a lot of money, that you would probably want to clean up the logging, make it more clear. Basically, I needed to start and end for every line of the input file. And I need to see what to do. That was simple.
Your testing process for this kind of stuff. Did you just like dirty up the data intentionally?
So the biggest test for it was to make sure that the parity of the maintenance windows were identical. And we went through every collection, every maintenance window. And originally we were creating 70 or 80 collections. That's when we started going through it. And I realized that I had the logic right for that. And then we consolidated the input down. We checked them all again. Then we start checking numbers, physically open the query and validate, pieces of it. We open the database, run queries against the database to make sure that we were returning the same number of lines, elements, and things. So it was a lot of that. We found that we were missing in one of the Sunday collections, and there was a tick mark missing. My normalization of input, I found it and like yeah, voodoo. So it just puked. That's probably because of my exception calling. That's probably why I never got an error out of it, because I wasn't calling it correctly.
Or you just error?
I'd see the error in the actual UI, like
Okay.
in the log, and I kept going to the log. I'm like, why is it not logging? I'm like, And I know that some things don't really work that well with try and catch. So I chalk up to that.
I'm pretty bad at try catch, so I can't really say it.
I would expect that SQL things. The cover was on that.
Well, we're passing in.
Yeah, don't forget it.
Yeah.
No, to make it work with try catch, you have to tell it error action stop, and then it'll be fine.
Gotcha.
So it doesn't go up.
Were you, in this instance, for the collections, were you working?
So what they did was a pretty interesting approach, right? So they had this mentality for years. I create a query, and the query is going to be a query of if the NetBIOS name is in this list of NetBIOS names. Because in 07, machines would fall out, the client would stop responding or stop working, and they wanted, when the client got fixed, for it to come right back into the same collection where it was at. But if you do a query that's not a NetBIOS name query, there's a good chance that there's some period of time that will lapse before that machine will fall into that collection again. you do it based on the NetBIOS name, it's highly unlikely to take any time at all because it's a direct match. You don't have to wait for inventory or any of that kind of data, right? So it's in the DDR. And so all of their collections were built that way, but some of them were in attribute lists and some of them were in, some of them had sub-select joins as we looked at, and those all got cleaned up to be all list of values. So if you're in this list of values, you go in this collection.
So I guess going forward, deploying your machines, that's just part of the process to add it to this.
Some ideas on how to make it better, because right now the tool that they use with the script creates a new rule every time. Imagine you have a server with a collection of 10 rules. Server, you don't want a collection rule that's a member of. So you have to go edit it, those values, right? And then you're like, or you copy out, paste, and do a control find. It's so I gave them some ideas on how to manage that better. Our script is done. See. And there. And the you guys only have 7 days in your week?
I have 2.
Two.
Just Monday and Sunday.
Is this wants to respond to me? We'll take a gainer and see what. That's not fun. There we go. Yeah. Sunday at 12 a.m. is by far their biggest window. That's where most of their machines live. Another element that we tested is we moved a couple of clients over, and we had some non-clients over, and they all showed up in the right collections. Cool. So there should be, I should have control. Yeah, so there's a couple of query rules. We got to split it out a couple of ways, right? So, get it. I think the first one is the one that has no entry because it's just too large. So notice that is completely blank. Good. So I took all the queries and eliminated this from the mix whatsoever and just created a new collection with that query. Still blank. So it's some kind of character limit. But if you go and include all the data, because it shows up here in the query statement. So that's essentially what we did.
Have you inquired about that? If that was on our
I haven't yet. I was going to post something to the Microsoft to see if anybody knew about it. I got to take a screenshot of it yet and do it. I should probably count how many elements are actually in it and figure out what the breaking point would be. Over this many elements in a list of values makes it go away.
That seems like a weird error.
It's very weird. We all saw it and we thought there was something wrong with the script, and then we created it manually using just PowerShell, and then we saw it again, so then we manually created it, and I'm like, that's weird. Took some elements out of it, took a giant chunk of them, created it, and you can see them. Huh. So that's kind of the presentation I had. I am interested in feedback. One thing I learned is the, what did you call it?
The sub-expression.
There you go. That needs to happen.
Before 11.
Before.
You're fine.
That's a search and replace.
Yeah.
That's easy enough. Don't yes, but it can search and replace across a bunch of files.
Yeah, but the notepad.
So I have a couple more on the process questions, stuff that that is related though. So what was your lead time on this? You said you picked this up on the 9th?
Yeah, so
So
I'll tell you, I started the project first.
Okay.
On the first. I was on site. We agreed we're going to use migration links to set them up. Well, the place is large, so it's hard to get permissions to do things. So I still don't have an account, right? So this week we looked at it and we're like, all right, well, on Monday we got the other desktop team who owns the infrastructure involved and said, let's set up a migration link with the old server infrastructure and we'll test it. We started the migration process and those guys were like, yeah, we can't do this. There's so much junk this is going to bring over. We can't have this in our environment. So Monday afternoon, I was sitting around going, all right, how important are the collections? They were all saying how important they were. And when you looked at the structure, it was intimidating, right? I mean, they had 6, 7 deep all the way across the board. And so I was like, well, the only other option is to script it or create it by hand. They're like, we're going to miss something if we create it by hand. So I started scripting it on Tuesday. We tested until, well, today. So I moved on to a different task on Friday, and then we tested.
So you wrote it in 3 days.
Yeah.
And then spent
4
days, and then 5 days of testing.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
It's pretty good.
As much as is happening in there.
Well, the good news is it's something I'm familiar with. SCCM, but the process and the script and the syntax is just as like the other, right?
Yeah.
Just doing to PowerShell what I did in VBScript, which is really had a good coach to it. Right?
And the chance that you're going to encounter something similar enough to reuse the script isn't all that high either. So,
No, but what I like is that you have all those regions for beg, borrow, and steal from this.
My script sometimes like, oh, you got these regions, epic failure. Like, all right, let's do that. So, yeah, I like using that, and especially if it's something I'm going to give to a customer, right? I mean, if this was just for me, it'd be different, but this got turned over to a customer, and it's in documentation.
so
Right?
the customer's going to run it tonight?
Yeah, I'm going to be online watching them. So,
Well, and like all the little, bits of documentation. I do.
what I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll go through and look at it. I'm like, oh man, I got to remember what happened here.
There's a running joke that self-documenting code is code you won't understand in 6 months.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
Because I hear, I mean, that's one of the things that people are talking about more and more in the community, right? Is that your code should be self-documenting.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how about we write documentation first, and then we'll talk about self-documenting code.
There was just a callback because my old glory days of VBScript, right? Yeah, just to call back, I think I did the same thing here. I had determine if the computer is a laptop or desktop, pull the AD site, parse the first layers, determine the site code that you're in. So I did the same thing back in the VBScript days, right? This was delivered to a customer. So it's just, that's a habit that kind of stayed with me.
Yeah, that syntax is not at all intuitive. I'm glad we don't do that anymore.
Yeah. I
For each next?
I hate
Yeah, for each next. I still, when I start writing a for loop in PowerShell, for each next. Damn it, stop. Yeah,
From the VBScript. Love VBScript. That's where I learned.
that's where I grew up, man.
I've
VBScript
written
is
enough
awesome.
of it, but I don't like it.
If you want pepperoni, it's on the table.
I
didn't mean to
once
steal all
wrote
of
an
it.
entire employee onboarding VB script. It was 230 some odd pages when he printed it out. But it accommodated, created exchange mailboxes after determined what exchange mailbox store you should be in. It was some gnarliness. It was before identity management stuff existed.
I'm pretty sure our onboarding script is still VB.
Yeah.
So he has the time for PowerShell.
Yeah.
Because That's too involved.
That log zipping script that I wrote, yeah, I replaced the VBScript because nobody else knew how to actually use the Windows zipping component, the compression.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we don't know how to do that, and so they had somebody try to script it through PowerShell with WinZip and stuff, and I'm like, well, then we have to put WinZip on every machine. Why?
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we have this VBScript that works. Let's just throw that on a 12 machine. No, let me try. Okay.
Like, but nobody knows how to decipher its language. Nobody knows what it's
Refer to it.
Bring in a VBScript guy. But I started in IT really young. So let's take the time element out. Let's say that you had another 2 weeks for the script. What's some of your feedback on the script?
Well, it works.
Right.
So
Do the box check, right?
that's a code review. If the code does what you set out to do, then you got 100%. Anything that I say about the script is for next time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm always interested in that.
because I don't want to discourage people. 3 pages of notes on what you did wrong. They're like, I'm not ever teaching again. So
No, what I'm interested in is talk about the error message and this is why I would need, right?
When you've got a string like that, right? It doesn't interpret the properties that you're trying to call there unless you wrap it in that sub-expression. So the sub-expression says actually evaluate this thing. You can run all kinds of arbitrary PowerShell commands in the middle of that. You can do like get child item and then filter and do all kinds of stuff inside of there.
get date.
That's cool.
So yeah, you can do all kinds of crazy stuff inside the sub-expression.
And what denotes the sub-expression?
Dollar and then the parentheses. It'll actually, PowerShell will run that code first and then
Just like a math
put it into
equation
the
in
string.
stats, right? It's always going to run the parenthetical reference first.
So those are really useful. I use those a lot.
Yeah, I did not know this.
Do you like your days of the week section?
Yeah. That was one part I'm not terribly proud of.
I was like,
I almost took it out.
might be out there.
I thought switch, right? That'd be old. I have to relate it to something I knew, right? So that would be, it was a select case in SQL, right? Would be very similar to a switch.
Yeah.
This guy. Yeah, I wrote this. I'm like, oh, I almost took this out for this. Yeah. Hey, just go and do a bunch of if
functions that halfway through you're like, there's a better way, but I can see the
I'm like,
end.
I'm like, I was looking at my watch. Literally, I'm like, this again today. I don't want to have to go learn something new.
Yeah.
So I'm like, if then else it is for the win. So
Or regex.
yeah, I thought about the regex too, but then I'd have to go look up the expression and figure out what I needed to do.
I don't know. I'm a big fan of arrays just because anytime I can use a list and parse through those things and just use it, that works.
Yeah.
All right. The week.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't
We was down to like 3, 4 lines.
Like is not extensive.
because that's C-like, right? For
C-like,
right. So you could do, and since you have star something star,
Yeah.
you can just do match.
Interesting. How about the learning operators would be a good use of my time?
Can you do a one-card match?
Yeah, matches.
I thought match.
Matches regex.
I thought match had to be matched, not actually.
With that, you can just do contains. Just do the string.
You can do that too.
And always, probably not a big deal in this case, but especially since you're using like, but always specify either 2 upper or 2 lower.
Yeah.
And do the query based on that. That way, if you do have certain languages, PowerShell's not a big deal with certain languages that are case sensitive.
Yeah. Well, if you looked at the normalized input, this that it's searching through is all uppercase. Right. So I did that before I should pass it in. But yeah. I think
by default.
it's got to work.
It's got to work.
Yeah.
Hey, it worked. That's what mattered.
Do it in 2 or 3 lines.
Yep. I had a guy that I used to work with that he was very, very intelligent, and I'd always write a VBScript, and he would come through and write it because he was just to be fun. And he took one of my more complicated scripts and tailored it down to like 10 lines. It's not consolidated and all that. Okay, now you've made it really unreadable to any human. And I can tell anything it was doing.
Right, and that's a good trade-off.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes longer code is better code,
Simple.
even if it is slower code, because you can maintain it.
Yeah. Well, when we started this process, it was taking an hour and a half to get through it.
Yeah.
And it took 6 minutes now, right? There was a time trade-off, and I don't know where that point was, but I didn't want to sit there for an hour and a half and watch it all run. Let's watch it run, maybe. But
So is anybody, or just didn't like specify anything other than the name? So does anybody add
The
common things for like mandatory and?
yeah, so I thought about doing some of that, but I don't have any exposure to it other than I think one of the PowerShell user groups, there was a big chat, maybe the one that was in SLU, where I found out that was a thing that you could do, right? So,
I mean, you have to make them advanced functions, right, before you can add that?
Yes,
Add that
it will.
commit.
If you
binding.
add that, it becomes an advanced function, but I typically make it an advanced function.
That's kind of what I've always been told too, is just that's a default knee-jerk reaction thing, but I didn't know if you could add those parameter things, what am I trying to say? Whether they're mandatory attribute, without that.
As soon as you your function is an advanced. So
I'd even specify it otherwise.
put command line. That's
Oh,
that's the
okay.
typical way. You say command line with a
uh,
parameter
Oh,
block.
okay.
yeah, it's another thing that I've noticed, like, so I have the Sapien, what's the tool?
Which one?
The
Primal.
scripts. Yeah, Primal Script
Primal
Studio,
Script.
or PowerShell.
Yeah.
Or PowerShell Studio.
Yeah.
Right, but one of my consultants needed it for a project, so I don't have to install at the moment, right? I don't have 2 licenses because it's expensive.
It is.
And so I'm just setting up a default script there. There's so many areas and blocks that it sets up that I haven't had time to actually go through and understand if I need them or don't. And I can tell you based on this, I don't, right?
Right.
If it was a reusable script or something you're managing in a lifetime, you'd probably want to use a lot of those different elements like the parameter attributes.
Yeah, like the outer script, where you defaulted the values.
Yeah.
There's really not any value, right? You're gonna call it with these values. You're not ever gonna be doing parameter discovery, gosh, how do I run this script?
Yeah.
Because of the lifetime of the script, it doesn't
Yeah.
really even make sense to invest in that.
Yeah.
Now,
That's why one of the first things when I approach is, what does that look like, right? And I have a good example of another script I wrote for customer form that I actually use PowerShell Studio to exceed, because what it does is it does a whole lot of things in the startup of a machine, and it gives them a way to get into the VDI environment seamlessly, right? That was a PowerShell that I spent a lot of time on and had actually peer review help with it. To different story that's going to be reused and maintained for years.
on the other hand, the functions inside, those really should be advanced functions. And the reason is that you're calling those all the time. If you misspell a parameter name and it's not, PowerShell doesn't care. It's going to pass it the right parameter,
Yeah.
and you won't know. You won't even get an error.
Yeah, this reminds me of the what was the VBScript thing that I never did either, where you have to declare that. Yeah. Principle. Yeah. This is gonna pass through, or if you typo it, it wouldn't actually pass through, or you didn't declare something.
Right.
The variable wouldn't actually go. So.
And the good thing about doing that is that you don't have to do anything else. Just put command line on the
Yeah.
parameter block, and it will check your parameter names for you without doing any other work. So to me, that's the easiest free thing you could ever do to make your scripts more reliable.
Meeting your head so long.
Now with those advanced functions, I mean, that's what you use to, support should process or the, chain reaction, things like that. I mean, benefit from that. I mean, granted, this is kind of a one-time thing, but,
I'm sure elements of it could be used for other things down the road, but.
yeah.
So the other thing I was thinking about this too is how many functions you have in here that to have the main body of the script be standalone and have everything else be in a module and call the functions from that module.
Maybe you could do it in 3 lines.
The module thing is what
Sorry.
he really brought to my attention with a lot of the stuff.
Can
that
you
we were
send me the
going
3
through
lines?
too,
Just a
Is
sec.
just because, I was either creating, one-off little bitty scripts, or I would create a big
Can
script
you go back to
that,
your
runs
code
through
that
a
shows
ton
it
of
so I
stuff.
can make sure I get it
And Mike
correct?
was like, that's great. It does what you want, but let's break it down because eventually, Nikki, you wanna, I'm gonna
Okay,
give
so we
it
just
to,
want to set
our
the
knock
day
or
of the
something
week
to
afterwards, right?
be able to
Yep.
use in some way.
That's the
shape,
only
or
thing
form.
coming out.
And so, he has me, modules instead of, which is great because I think it's a lot more functional.
It's a lot easier to use.
Yeah, yeah, it does. 'Cause
Things are easy, even little tiny functions. And, or you gotta find that and copy and paste it.
Outsource it or something like that.
Yeah.
That's waste of
It
time.
does. It is a waste of time.
Huh?
Your logging one, especially, like we have one
That's,
that
yeah.
we do, we have stuff for CDT deployments.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
created a logging function to use the see and trace tool.
Nice.
So, but we created that in a module so that we can always just load that module.
Oh, I'm glad you
and
did demo.
call it no matter which script we're calling.
That's pretty cool. We do, I know William does a lot of, he wrote a logging and some other functions that he puts in and basically outsources them for everything. Probably should move that to the module as opposed to the actual script function itself.
In one of your first functions, I want to say that you return something with a return, but you also had, maybe it wasn't that one, but one of them at least, you return, yeah, it's right there in line 69.
Yep.
You have data.count.
Yep.
That actually outputs that value from the function, even though you have a return statement after it. So you actually are going to return an integer and a collection.
This was done honestly just to make sure that I was parsing the right amount of data when I was actually inputting the file. So I could actually comment that it does nothing for me.
My point is that if you set a variable equal to read data,
Oh, I see. I
it's
see.
going to not get a collection. It's going to get a collection, and the first element is going to be 5, and the second element is going to be the collection of data. Which
Looks like you may have just solved.
yeah, that's it right there.
Data. That is why, so for each collection of data, that's why the first line comes out as nothing.
Yeah.
Because it's
So-
returning that. You
Yeah.
just solved that problem.
That's a really, really common. The way functions work in PowerShell is
There we go.
it's awesome, but it's a little
Thanks.
bit different.
Yeah, it is different. Yeah.
So
Here you go. I'll tweet her at you.
Tweeters.
I don't actually have another way to get a hold of you, so.
You have my email. I think we emailed about.
Yeah, but that's not on my personal one.
Uh,
So then I'll use this absolutely ridiculous input string.
use the sub expression there already in 79.
So you do know.
yeah, I had to use it for that my exception message wasn't going to come through unless I used it.
And it's exactly the same reason.
It's that whole object-oriented thing, right? Because it's an object that you need to instantiate.
It really has to do with how the PowerShell engine parses double-quoted strings. When it sees a dot, it's like, okay, I'm done with the variable.
Yeah.
I'll just output what was over there, and then okay, there's a dot and some other stuff. Who cares what that is? But when it does the sub expression, it's like I got to evaluate this whole thing.
You can do variables with spaces in them, right? If you wrap it in quotes.
Sure. Yeah, you can have.
I don't think you should.
Yeah. You can
Let's
have
be
very
clear.
Make a left.
very pathological variable names in PowerShell.
Because if you wrap it in quotes, you could do something got something.
You could, yeah.
It
And sometimes
wouldn't
you
be
have to,
maintainable.
sometimes, like if you're getting a CSV from somewhere that isn't, from an object, like say you out the schedule tasks in the names of the properties in that CSV. So when you import it, all of a sudden you've got this crap that isn't really valid.
It's one of my biggest problems when I import stuff from Dell's firmware. Right? They got spaces everywhere, and they don't have like clean names to use. You're like,
Right.
what? You know this is like nobody's using this except from code. Like nobody's.
Right.
What are you doing?
How did you think this was a good idea?
Did that code section make sense? So you set days of the week, and you give it the list of the days of the week. You have your input string already, so really it's 2 lines. And then it's $day of the week is equal to days of the week, where object. Input
Really, it's
string
just 2 lines.
So.
I think I got 30. Message.
But it would be whatever yours actually was, so you wouldn't need that line.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah, look, I was going to do something, what I wanted to do was show off
Okay.
something cool I had learned, which is this one. So if you do, change the
So if you really want to make Mike crazy, just put a ton of stuff on your desktop.
don't stop it.
Oh, wait. What are you talking about?
You don't even need the collection variable, right? You could just do the whole thing in one
Yeah,
line.
you could.
Mike, please refer to the screen.
Oh, God, you're so good. You're a disgusting person. Oh, God.
Oh, I wish you'd auto arrange right then. It would have messed up your holes.
I don't even care. All that stuff can be deleted. It's just a matter of I put it there for temporary storage, and then I never go back and clean it up.
Here.
Mike does not support that. I have the same problem.
Yeah, because everybody who tells me that's temporary storage, every time I go to their desktop, I'm like, it's still there.
Yeah.
It's still waiting for me. It's like
I just hide it.
Windows. I just like.
Oh, you didn't even need to look at it. You haven't even seen that. Use it as a temporary playground for everything.
So what I was trying to do was use this cool thing that I saw on the Twitters a long time ago, by which I mean like 2 or 3 weeks. Did you know that you can silence any action just by putting Boolean in front of it? You can turn it into true false. If it doesn't return any data, it'll come back as false, and if it returns any data, it'll come back as true. So you can do where statements, and as long as your where clause filters something, you can have that return. But you can do that for anything and everything which does filters or queries or whatever. So
Well, if that's the case,
And actually, if you're using it in a filter in a word clause, you don't even have to cast it to Boolean.
also
Yeah, values are true.
Right.
Anything else is false. So
But if you're returning output, that's another way to add your quiet clause.
sure.
Well, let's just compare the functions real quick here. Just have a gander.
Yeah.
Seems more efficient.
And as Mike pointed out, you can do it all actually in one line. You just take that series of
Yeah, right there.
trash can. Yeah, we're fine. That's if you just take the series of strings and put those in place of days of the week in the second line, it's just one line. It does look a little bit longer and kind of wonky, but
It's still not bad.
nope, it still works.
That's all I needed to do.
In fairness, we had the luxury of coming in and looking at it.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
needed to get it done for the customer.
Yeah.
Which, as Mike pointed out, like, does it work? It's an A. There you go.
It does.
That's one thing that I've been trying to stress is, as we move to teach people in our org about that, is that it's more important to solve the problem than to look good solving the problem, right?
But it's also good to go over and try to pick out a few, kind of low-hanging fruit in a script. It's like,
Sure.
the next time you do this, you might think about
Well, that's
doing these things because you want people to get better.
The other thing you might
Because
wanna
people
do-
writing code like that don't feel good about themselves.
No, because I almost took it out before I showed everybody. I knew it was a faux pas.
Well, and that's one of the things too, right? Is that none of us who saw that hadn't done the same thing in the past and been like, "This is too stupid. I'm not going to do this anymore." Like the only reason we know is because we were embarrassed to show other people our version. But one thing that I did notice is at the top, you were using non-standard help stuff. Have you considered just using comment-based help at the top?
I mean,
I'll send you this over Twitter as well. This is, in all seriousness, and I'm going to share this with the so I'll put it in the chat, although I don't think anybody's going to see it.
I have
because
it
think it's just
bookmarked
me.
now.
But
Wonderful.
but yeah, so it's June's overall fantastic help deep dive.
Yeah.
This is ridiculously good stuff. If you want to level up your game, definitely check that out. She's also got something where she walks through like PowerShell classes, or she's like a glass of wine kind of thing. Very, very useful information here.
I'm sorry. You drink wine while
I'm constantly drunk. Should we not clear this up? I thought that was understood.
So comment-based help, you just format your comment
Yeah.
a particular way,
Mhm.
and the engine knows what the keywords are in there.
So
And
like
it
if you
basically-
do show window
you
or
get
something,
real
you
Yeah.
can
help.
see
Can
it.
you do
Yeah,
get
that's
help
cool.
on scripts?
Absolutely.
I didn't know that. That actually that makes it
sure
more
can.
useful because then somebody could do get help and then the path to your script, and they'll actually be able to see the information which would be good for the customer.
That would be good for the customer.
That'd probably be really helpful. I didn't know you could do that.
This is why I like to come to these things. I learn.
That's why I try to encourage people to come to these things.
I got the
You just got
look.
an eye.
I know.
No, I was actually
Next
looking
time
on
I'm
the
bringing
table.
my kid, and then we'll watch him run
Actually,
around
if you
the
bring your
table.
kid, I'll bring mine. They can just go off
Oh,
and
they
play.
what? Yeah, that'll work.
Can I bring my dog? Does that count?
Yes, my daughter
They'll
will
ride
be
him.
obsessed with your.
That's fine.
Oh.
I have a poodle. We can ride her all night.
Oh my god, my daughter would love that.
She's a lazy monster, though. Doesn't actually do anything. What else? There was something else I saw. I don't remember.
Error handling for WQL.
Yeah, the try-catch statement.
Right? That the idea there is that PowerShell things that aren't .NET things,
Mm-hmm.
like the way it does WMI, use what's called a non-terminating exception or non-terminating error.
Mm-hmm.
So rather than failing the entire statement, they'll write to the error string, but that means that you don't catch it in a try-catch block.
So that's what I was referring to when some things don't work in the try catch.
Right, and the idea is, if I'm querying 1,000 servers in the server farm, what are the chances that all 1,000 of them are going to respond? Probably zero, right?
Depends on how good your operations team is.
Well,
Probably zero.
probably zero, or sometimes it's going to be zero.
Yeah.
So if
You gotta.
there was an exception, right, you would get no results at all.
Yep.
With non-terminating errors, you get 997 and you get 3 error records.
Yep.
And you can actually look at that collection and see what happened. And if you CIM instead of WMI, you can actually tell what machines actually failed from that error collection. So if you want to take a non-terminating error and force it to be a terminating error, you just tell it error action stop.
So do you have a good way to change the error action preference, other than to like set a temp variable to the current preference, change it before you go into the try-catch block,
And then
and change it afterwards?
Just do it on the commands themselves. Just error action stop.
But no, for the
You mean to do it in
if
a
it's
scope?
no. So the example would be, I almost got up to like go to the whiteboard. The example would be like if you're doing if you're calling an actual .NET property rather than doing it as a function, right? So you need it, or not .NET, because .NET will actually terminate, but
Like a script property.
correct. Yeah, or a method in this case, if you're gonna call in a method that could throw a non-terminating error, do you have a good way to stop? Because the only thing that I've ever done is I wrote a terrible thing that it does it's a push error action preference and pop error action preference. So I mean that's the best thing that I was able to find.
Yeah, I hadn't even ever run into that.
I've had to do that a couple of times.
I usually just tell people never change the preference variables. You know, it's really dangerous.
Right.
And never, of course, there's a star by there. Sometimes you have to, but
So I usually
using
do.
a push and a pop is a good idea.
That's the only way that I was ever able to find around it. So
Yeah, you have to do that with confirmation. There's some trickery you have to do to make confirm statements work right.
sure.
But
We dealt with this. No, we dealt with it. You remember my FTP authorization stuff?
I do.
And I can't remember though. We'll have to go look at it because I didn't want to write error action stop on absolutely everything. And there's something I did.
yeah,
I have to go look at it.
the main reason I don't like to change the preference variables is that if I'm calling somebody else's code, I don't know what it's going to do to their code.
Yeah.
And you know, I don't want to, you know, have this great module that I'm using that somebody else wrote, and then I broke it because I just, you know, changed the preference variable. So
Oh, because that cascades, doesn't it?
it does. All the preference variables do.
I didn't think about that.
Which is why you have to do stuff in the confirm
Sure.
when you're done confirm statements.
No, I mean, this was actually, I think, a really cool thing to do. I think going through like a real world problem solving is something maybe we should consider doing a little bit more often, because this makes it a lot more accessible to people in general. So how are you doing your post-script testing? Because boy, howdy, do I have something to evangelize to you.
You gonna talk about Pester?
I was going to pester him about it.
Okay.
Ah, there it is. So yeah, my post-script testing has all been done by execution.
Okay.
So I didn't put it through anything to like Pester or, you know.
Sure. And again, for the timeline you had, I would not have gone and written 300 unit tests.
The thing is, though, if you're doing, you run the thing and then you're going into SCCM and you're clicking around and looking at things.
Yep. Or going into the
that takes,
SQL database.
That takes time to
Yeah.
do that. And
Yep.
like you said, if you had done the migration manually, you're going to miss stuff. Clicking around doing your testing that way,
Could still miss stuff.
it's easier to miss stuff that way.
Sure.
I will say what we do is we tend to run a lot of SQL queries and dump the information that we just put in there. They can do, it's basically
Sure.
get the data programmatically of what was in there in the old and what was in there now.
So you're still running programmatic tests, you're just not using Pester.
Yeah.
So let's say I'm your customer, we put this in place. How do I verify that it doesn't corrupt over time? How do I know I can trust it? I mean, the migration's done, right?
Yeah,
How do I know? What do you typically see people put in place to kind of verify that things are the way they think they are? Like, nobody changed my maintenance window, for example.
Well, that's the fun part, right? So like maintenance windows, they shift and drift all the time. There's not anything like DSC that would want to put in to make it not drift, right? Or compliance settings inside of SCCM. What we tend to do is we have reports that the server owners, because server owners are ultimately responsible for the actual outage windows. So we have reports that we basically shell out to server owners to make sure that they're still valid reports, and there's still a human element that makes sure that they have to run it, because there's not a master element like ServiceNow should be or whatever their CMDB should be. But we all know how that operates and how that works, and it's not always the cleanest
Any
data.
direct master tests for our CMDB.
Yeah, you should.
Because it's
Yeah.
it's wacky.
I think the next PowerShell user group should be on Pester and unit testing in an automated fashion. But
You just missed the one that we had
No!
for testing state.
are you serious?
It's actually recorded though. Chris Hunt from Ticketmaster, the guy that wrote
Oh, that was last
Yeah.
week. Yeah.
Yeah.
Flashback, which is a little different take because it's not unit testing so much as it's environment testing.
correct.
But,
It's,
I mean, it
it's
uses
more
the same-
analogous to server spec from Chef,
Yeah.
Right.
which I
That's
think is
cool.
where it came from.
Yeah, that's kind of the idea.
So I missed it.
It was good. It's also recorded on the same channel that yours is being recorded on.
Hey, are we still recording?
Turn it off.
Nope.
You're still sharing your screen.
Yeah, I still see it.
Let's see here.
All right, thank you guys for watching. I think we're canceling out now.
Yeah.
So have a great night, everybody. Although in fairness, I think I'm the only person still watching.